Good afternoon and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Development Panel of Allerdale Borough Council. My name is Lee Jardine. I'm the Democratic Services Officer, and for the purposes of this meeting, I'm also the host. The meeting is currently being live streamed on YouTube and recording will be made available afterwards. I won't have any control over the meeting and the meeting will not begin until instructed by the chair. Before we go on to the meeting, we'll just do some introductions, starting with the members. Councillor Coburn.
Good afternoon, Councillor Nikki Coburn.
Councillor Daniels.
Good afternoon, Councillor Alan Daniels.
Councillor Fairbrother.
Good afternoon, Councillor Janet Fairbrother.
Councillor Granger.
Good afternoon, Councillor Malcolm Granger.
Councillor Horsley.
Good afternoon, Councillor Daniel Horsley.
Councillor Lynch.
Good afternoon, Councillor Elaine Lynch.
Councillor Mumby.
Afternoon, Councillor Mumby.
Councillor Scott.
Good afternoon, Councillor Paul Scott.
Councillor Semple.
Hi, Councillor Randy Semple.
Councillor Smith.
Good afternoon, Councillor Alan Smith.
Councillor Tyson.
Afternoon, Councillor Alan Tyson.
And apologies, Councillor Kirkbride.
Good afternoon, Councillor Adrian Kirkbride.
And we'll move on to the officers now. Simon Sharp.
Good afternoon, Simon Sharp, Planning and Building Control Manager.
Jill Morgan.
Good afternoon, Jill Morgan, Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Thank you. Members, just a reminder to keep yourselves on mute unless you want to speak today. And if you want to speak, use the raised hand function. So what I'll do now is I'll hand you over to the chair to start the meeting. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. As previously stated, my name is Nikki Coburn and I'm Chair of the Development Panel for Allerdale Borough Council. You've been introduced to the members and officers in attendance today. The planning applications under consideration will be decided by the members of the panel who are councillors, and we are supported by the officers in attendance. Before we move on to the agenda, I would like to just pause for a minute's silence for His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh. Thank you. Thank you. Right, moving on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, to sign as the minutes. To sign as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of February 2021. For the purpose of this virtual meeting, I will assume that all members are in agreement with the minutes unless they raise their hand function to indicate that they wish to speak. Could members please indicate now if they don't approve of the minutes? Lee, I don't see any hands raised, do you?
No, Chair.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies received today from Councillor Armstrong, who's replaced today by Councillor Scott.
Thank you. Declarations of interest, agenda item 3. Please use the raise hand function if you wish to make a declaration. or if it becomes apparent during consideration of any of the applications that you may have an interest, please declare it at that point. Lee, do we have any? No declarations of interest. Questions? Do we have any questions, please?
No questions received, Chair.
Right, moving on then to agenda item 5, planning application FUL/2021/0026, Barncroft, 16 High Seaton, the proposed erection of 2 dormer dwellings, type B and C. If we could hand over, please, to Simon.
Chair, before we do that, I'm just making sure that the speakers on the meeting. Yep, Chair, the speakers on the meeting. Sorry about the interruption. We just got Simon now.
No, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. So this first application is for 2 dwellings within the curtilage of 16 High Seaton. Members may recall a previous application which is detailed in the report that came before them for 3 dwellings, A, B and C. That application was refused. And the reasons given were the impact of dwelling A on neighbouring residential amenities, specifically the impact on number 17 High Seaton. So in the resubmission, the applicant has divided the proposal into 2. Both applications are before members today. This first application is for plots B and C. So these are the 2 plots to the rear. And I'll just go through the slides in a second, and that will give you an indication, and just to remind members, or indeed those members who might not have been on the panel who considered the first application, the context of this proposal. And just to recall, there were some members of today's panel that had previously attended a site meeting with regards to the previous application. So those members will obviously be familiar with the site, albeit that the existing dwelling at number 16 High Seaton, Barncroft, has evolved since then. Members may recall, and it's detailed in the reports, that that dwelling had had permission to be altered and extended, and those works are ongoing. So without further ado, I'll just share the screen and we can go through the slides for this application. Are members all seeing this and the slides on the screen? Okay. So the dwellings under consideration on this first application are B and C. So A is not under consideration on this application, and 16 here is the existing extended dwelling. A is the one not under consideration. 17 is the adjoined dwelling. So it's these 2 dwellings, B and C. And these dwellings, their siting and the design of these dwellings has not changed since the previous application. So that's the important point to note. That haven't changed. What is of note to recall is that although each application must be considered on its own merits, we do recall, members, that your concerns were about A, which is outside of this application site. So you can see dwelling B, which is this one, is a modest dormer bungalow. So the dormer windows are facing towards Fernley Drive. This is Fernley Drive. The access is off Fernley Drive. And there are roof lights to the rear. So this is the rear elevation. This is the elevation facing Fernley Drive. This is house type C, so this is the one within the wedge at the back. So this one, you can see this is the dormer window facing forwards with roof lights to the rear. So just out of shot here is the nearest dwellings on Fernley Drive. So again, it's a modest dormer bungalow with the dormer on the single dormer on the front. So this is looking into that wedge of land with the existing dwellings on Fernley Drive here. This is the boundary, you can see the fence here. And just in shot is the dwelling on Fernley Close. Which is out of shot here. So dwelling C will be in this area. This scaffolding is the scaffolding on the existing dwelling, the extension to the existing dwelling. So we're now looking back from the area where dwelling A will be sited, which is not in this application, towards the ground for B, where I'm pointing the cursor now, and C beyond as the site narrows. So out of shot on the left is the existing dwelling at 17 High Seaton. This is the boundary fence. These two-storey dwellings are on Fernley Close, and these are the dwellings on Fernley Drive. So the access will come in from the right of the picture behind the existing dwelling at 16 High Seaton. And that's another view. So again, you can see the existing dwellings on Fernley Close, the existing lower 1.5-storey dwellings on Fernley Drive. This is the boundary treatment fence and hedge. This is the boundary fence on the other side. So as I say, dwelling B will sit in this area and dwelling C will sit behind it in the narrowing wedge of the application site. So this is from Fernley Drive's property. Looking back, there's number 17 High Seaton. So we're looking across the sites, the proposed siting of C and B. The existing dwelling Barncroft 16 High Seaton is out of shot to the left. And now we're looking across that wedge of land. So we're outside the application site, looking across the narrowest part of that wedge. So the site is between the two fences, which will in effect be the rear garden of plot C. And these are the dwellings on Fernley Drive. Just here onto Fernley Close. This is looking back towards the 16 High Seaton, the existing dwelling, which is in a state of flux at the moment, being altered and extended. And the access will come in here. Members may recall the applicant has acquired part of the garden, which was in 1 Fernley Drive, and it will come in through here to B and C. It will also intended to serve dwelling A, which will be alongside 16 High Seaton. This is just showing the access. This is the protected tree. So we're looking down towards High Seaton. This is the junction with High Seaton. This is the existing access into 16 High Seaton. And the new access will be further up Fernley Drive. So that concludes the images and the plans. Obviously, members, if you wish, then we can I can share the screen and go back to those. you would have received a copy of that presentation prior to this meeting anyway. There were questions previously about drainage. The surface water drainage is to an existing watercourse within the site, and the foul drainage is to the mains sewers. The flood risk assessment and drainage strategy have been updated to reflect those latest proposals. And as you'll see from the officer's report, there are no statutory consultee objections with regard to those details. What you will see from the report is that there are objections from concerns from Seaton Parish Council, and indeed also from neighbouring residents, and they are detailed in paragraph 6.7 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lee. Do we have a speaker for this one? Yes.
Yes, Chair. The speaker on this item is Joanne Mounsey. Joanne, you'll have 5 minutes to deliver your representations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd just like to comment on the photos that were presented. I think the perspective from the photographs actually make the site look a lot bigger than what it actually is. So I'd just like to make that point. As far as my objection goes, I'd like to object on the grounds of design. I believe that the design of the properties are not in keeping with the area of High Seaton, including the Fernley House, which is directly opposite the entrance to the development, which is a Fernley House, and its outbuildings are Grade 2 listed properties. Also in relation to my own property, which is an 18th century cottage. So I believe that these developments don't impact positively on the character, history and distinctiveness of their location and do not integrate well with the existing buildings. I believe it does not positively contribute to the character or quality of the area as outlined in the requirements of the Allerdale Plan Part 1. Density, putting 3 proper dwellings, and as a later application has been made to put a 3rd property type A, which is not being discussed here, but the proposal is for 3 properties on this piece of land. I believe that the plot density would be significantly out of keeping with the High Seaton area. Infilling within existing developments is something that's not promoted within the NPP framework. And it may be also worth noting that previous planning applications by the previous owner, after many years of refusal for 3 dwellings, had outline planning permission granted for 1 dwelling on the plot, which again is more in keeping with the High Seaton area. Residential amenity and privacy, as well as impacting on the residential amenity of the surrounding properties on Fernley. And to a certain extent my own, the proposed dwellings would also have compromised residential amenity from the existing surrounding properties, including I would be directly overlooking property type B from my rear garden, which is elevated to this plot, and from windows at the rear of my property. Highway safety. The addition of 3 properties on the highway safety of Fernley Junction and the main road will be impacted by this development. The existing development at 16 High Seaton has been significantly increased in size. The plans show a 5-bedroom planning permission was granted, but this appears to have been replicated on the attic floor. So there's a significant increase in the number of bedrooms on number 16 High Seaton, and I can only assume that there'll be associated increase in number of cars to that. The main road is a very busy road. It's got a busy junction almost directly opposite Hunters Drive. We have Seaton Academy. We have a play park on Hunters Drive, Happy Hours Nursery. So there's a lot of traffic and a lot of pedestrians, including children, in that area. And I myself personally have recently witnessed 2 near-miss traffic accidents at the Fernley Junction. So I can only presume that if I've seen 2, then the probability is that there are actually more potential accidents waiting to happen. Environmental impact. The land being proposed for development is currently supporting a wide variety of wildlife, including many species of birds, insects and animals such as stoats and red squirrels. I've seen numerous red squirrels coming from that land. And I believe this development has a significant impact on the habitats of wildlife. Again, something which the Allerdale plan says should be avoided. We talked the talk around the flooding risk of the property. I believe the surface water will be diverted into an existing underground culvert, which takes surface water from the field of behind Fernley Close, which historically was flooded because of this water. If the culvert's capacity is not suitable enough to take the additional water that this site will be diverted into, then again the risk of flooding could occur. Other properties in the area, so the cottages on the other side of me, number 19 and 20 High Seaton, have been flooded, and that was approximately 4 years ago. So the flood in the area is still there. I also believe that service delivery and infrastructure would be impacted. There have been numerous developments in Seaton over the years, and more recently at the top of High Seaton and an ongoing one on Loughby Lane, and this is putting immeasurable strain on local facilities. This development, while small in comparison to those, all adds to a cumulative effect on those local facilities and is therefore significant. This strain can be witnessed at peak times in the village when you see the volume of traffic and pedestrians around the shop area and the Seaton Academy School area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mounsey. Do we have any questions from members for the speaker? Councillor Fairbrother.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Joan, for your presentation. I understand you live at number 17, yeah?
Correct, yes.
You mentioned the grade 2 listed buildings opposite to the access. Can you tell us a bit more about them?
Yes, so I believe it's only one of 2 listed buildings in Seaton. It's Fernley House, and it has associated outbuildings, which are, I believe, converted into flats. And the entrance to those flats is almost directly opposite the entrance to this proposed development. But when you look now visually, because at number 16 they've built a 3-car garage, that has actually had a really detrimental effect upon the aesthetics of the area. I mean, Fernley House in its buildings at old sandstone. It's an old sandstone property, and I believe having an additional contemporaneous dwellings of modern design, I think that's going to erode the character of Fernley House and its buildings.
Thank you. Thanks for that detail. Thanks very much, Joanne.
Thank you. We don't appear to have any more hands up, so am I correctly? Yeah.
Yes, Chair, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. It's fine. Thank you, Ms. Mounsey.
Thank you.
Now, questions from members to Simon, please.
Sorry, Chair. There was another speaker which was registered, and that was actually the applicant. But I have a letter to read out on behalf of the applicant. So before questions to myself, I will just read out their letter verbatim if I can.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry.
So the representation goes as follows. Chair and members of the planning panel, we would like to take this opportunity to comment in relation to this planning application and the previous submission on this site. Members will be aware that this is a resubmission of 2 of the 3 houses proposed on the site. The planning application that was submitted under planning reference full 2020-0043 was refused at the development panel due to the concerns with regard to the scale and massing of the dwelling and its resultant impact on the residential amenity of 17 High Seaton. The principal concerns focused on the separation distance between the proposed site combined with the proposed scale of the development, and as such that plot is subject to a significantly amended proposal also to be considered on this agenda. For clarity, the reason for the decision of the above application is quoted in full. The development is contrary to criterion D of policy S32 of the Allerdale Local Plan, Part 1, 2014, as dwelling A, as proposed, has an unacceptable effect on the residential amenity of number 17 High Seaton in terms of loss of privacy as a result of overlooking, an increased sense of enclosure as a result of being overbearing, and loss of sunlight and daylight received as a result of overshadowing. As members will note, this raises no concerns or issues over the proposed development of plots B and C. The issues that members considered significant enough to refuse the previous submission are solely in relation to plot A and the interaction of this with number 17 High Seaton, not the rest of the site. We hope that members will retain consistency with this view, and given that there were no issues that warranted the refusal of dwellings B and C previously that are now subject to this application, that this will be approved in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Kind regards, Just Street DO Properties. And that is their representation verbatim, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I think it recalled basically what happened anyway at the last meeting about this application. Right, do we have any questions from members to Simon? Councillor Fairbrother.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not on mute, am I? No. I'm quite concerned about this grade 2 listed building, which is opposite the access, Simon. It's not mentioned in the report. And yet I thought if there was a listed building, we had to think about the setting of that building. And I'm just wondering if you can give us any detail on why it wasn't mentioned, and perhaps it has no impact from the officer's point of view. Can you elaborate on that, please, Simon?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fairbrother. That's because the officers considered there was no impact on the setting of the house whatsoever. So I can share the screen, which will show a Google Earth, which will show the relationship, if that's helpful to members. I'll just do that. So the site is in here, with the access coming through here. This is the listed building.
Right. Yeah.
So there is intervening development between the plots and the listed building. There is the access punch through, but there is, as I say, there is existing intervening development there, so we don't think there will be any effect on the setting of the listed building. Sorry, that's the response, Councillor.
Thank you for your answer. Thank you.
Thank you. That was most informative, Simon. Councillor Daniels.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Simon, the lady spoke about wildlife and red squirrels in particular. Do we have any study on that? Has there been an environmental or ecological study on that at all, or is that just hearsay?
I'm not going to obviously challenge the third party's representation. All I can say is that obviously the site is a live building site. There is a large proportion of it has been cleared of vegetation for some time. It was previously a garden rather than a field or pasture, so it was not species rich. So using Natural England's matrix for assessing whether surveys were necessary, we concluded that no additional surveys would be required. Just recalling members that if there are species on site, they will be afforded protection under the Wildlife and Countryside Act anyway, separate to planning. So we didn't consider it necessary or reasonable to require those surveys given the site's existing conditions, being a building site. And secondly, that if there are species encountered during the build, they will be protected under the Wildlife and Countryside Act anyway, if they're protected species, that is.
Thank you, Simon. Madam Chair, can I ask another question, or you can?
Is it a follow-up?
No, I'll come back.
Okay, just leave your hand up. It's fine. Councillor Horsley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Simon, you mentioned the culverts here and the surface water that's going to go into them again. I'm going to reflect back to 2015 and Storm Desmond, I think it was at the time. And obviously, being a Seaton lad, we are finding these culverts in a lot of old properties and that. We kind of know where they lead to. But anyhow, in 2015, I found myself with other councillors in people's back gardens where Lingbeck travels basically from the top of Seaton, follows basically the main road down on the other side of the road, Hunters Park, and onto what is Innerling Road now, which is obviously named after Lingbeck. At the time, Cymru County Council and the Environment Agency got together, and I think it was a joint effort to repair this Lingbeck, because it was a big culvert itself, and it blew holes in people's gardens. It absolutely, the damage it done was unbelievable. Now, I believe they lined this. So my worry here is with this culvert they found on the site, if it is going into Lingbeck, has it been cut off? Has that supply been cut off and it's just naturally this culvert, is it going somewhere else now? Has there been any checks on it where this culvert is actually leading to? My concern here is we're going to build these houses. If they do get the go ahead, where's this extra surface water going to go if it's just naturally seeping away now?
Thank you, Councillor Horsley. I'll share my screen again and I'll show you the layout of the drainage if I can. So the clay pipe, this is it's probably, sorry, part of the Zoom is actually in covering what I want to show. So this is the existing culvert coming in, and you can see that it changes direction. There's a dog leg. It actually connects into the sewers, so it doesn't actually come out of ground again. It's literally the culvert connects into the sewers. Now, if you recall, members who were on the development panel previously, it was actually Mountsie, the objector, who alerted everyone to the existence of this culvert in the first place. So we now know where it is. So the County Council, is in their capacity as lead local flood authority, have checked in terms of the capacity and the proposed tapping into this, which is obviously where you can see the red lines, and they don't have any objection. They take into account obviously 1 in 100 year rainfall events, and they also take into account climate change when assessing that. So all I can do is defer to the fact that their advice is that they don't have any objection, having been presented with this data and this information, Councillor.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that, having trouble unmuting myself. Councillor Fairbrother.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just interested in your comment, Simon, about that piece of land was a garden before. You would like to think if you have a garden, it's actually more species rich than a field. And it's obviously been decimated now, but I'm sure there are wild things living in there. However, my question was about the garden of number 17. Joanne said that her garden is elevated and will be overlooking House B. So are there concerns there? I know there's some details about frosted windows and so on, but how much is that an issue that if she's in the garden, she'll be looking down onto House B?
Thank you, Councillor. I'm just going to share my screen again, and so you can see the relevant slide. So you can see that elevation here, councillors. You can see the site, and you can see where the fence line is. You can actually see, which you'll see on the slides for dwelling A, the retaining wall. So there is that elevation between the site level and number 17's garden level. Obviously, I think it's fair to say, members, it is a balanced consideration here by officers. Just talking about, there obviously the area around Fernley Drive, Fernley Close is that higher density of development, and there is that interrelationship between dwellings in terms of, you can see even on this view how Fernley Close affords a view across into the Fernley Drive dwellings. We took that into account. We think actually that dwellings B and C relate more in character to the Fernley Close, Fernley Drive area rather than the High Seaton area, and so there is degrees of overlooking. We don't consider that to be significant enough to warrant a refusal, remembering that the dwelling to be overlooked is a proposed dwelling rather than the existing dwelling. The proposed dwelling's at the lower level. The proposed dwelling has the roof lights to ensure it isn't overlooking number 17 or Fernley Close. But it is fair to say that there will be views in the other direction, but that will be something apparent to a buyer. It's so our opinion as officers is the weight afforded to that issue is not as substantial as it would be if it was an existing dwelling being overlooked. So, it is a balanced consideration, Councillor. Councillors, Councillor Fairbrother, you're right. It is obviously increasing density because there's only one dwelling on the site at the moment, 16 Barncroft, with a substantial garden. So, policies S32, S33 do come into play with regard to character and design. I think that was referred to in the objector's presentation to you, and they're entirely correct. They are relevant considerations. You'll see, how officers have balanced that. But members are at liberty to to come to a different conclusion. It is a subjective judgment to make on that. Just on touching on the wildlife matters, you can see how disturbed the ground is. That's not to say, some species, as if you recall from the Network Rail applications that came before panel, some habitat thrives on disturbed ground. You remember about the kidney vetch and the small blue butterflies at Network Rail. But having looked at what its species poor here, this because it was lawn and other vegetation has been cleared. There are some adjoining trees and hedgerows, and that will support nesting birds, but it's nothing that is of a magnitude that would necessitate a full habitat survey for the site.
Thank you. Can I just come back, Nikki? Just a related question.
Yep.
The retaining wall, I've seen it in another photograph. Is that being built by number 17, or is it the retaining wall for the people who own the land, who are the applicants for B and C?
It's built by the applicant. So if members recall, the land has been excavated, so the land level is lower than it was prior to these proposals coming forward. So that retaining wall has been put in by the applicant. It is permitted development, so we don't have any control over that, but it does show the differences in the land levels. So it is right. The number 17's garden and house is at high level 2A, B, and C.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Okay, Councillor Daniels, you've been very patient.
I'm a very patient person. Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, I'm not. Simon, on 1117, they talk about the increased coverage of the site with impermeable surfacing. Is it possible for driveways, etc., to have a permeable surface? Is that something we could ask for?
You can, councillors. Obviously, in this situation, with the general impermeability of the soils, the water would end up in the same place. It would still end up in the culverted watercourse. So it's not really a win situation, other than it would provide a degree of cleansing to the water before it enters the watercourse. It's something you could consider, members. As I say, the scheme before members works in terms of surface water drainage. I would strongly suggest not resisting the proposal on the lack of permeable paving, but it is clearly a betterment that would add to cleansing of waters. If not, the water wouldn't actually percolate through the paving and then downwards into the soil, because the soil conditions aren't right. It would still end up in the watercourse. It would just have a degree of cleanse having gone through the paving. I'd strongly resist members resisting the proposal on the grounds of lack of permeable paving, though.
Thank you, Simon.
Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Simon, to confuse me today, in front of us today, we're following officers' recommendations with views on the drainage system, the locality. There's 12 policies here: design principles, development principles, mixed housing, transport, flood risk, and all those are relevant for officers' recommendations. So what is the problems today? Why are we reading too much into this?
it's no, as explained to other members. Thank you, Councillor. You know, a lot of those, if you look at those policies, policy S2, sustainable development principles, S4, design principles, S5, development principles, S32, safeguarding amenity, S33, landscape, DM14, standards of good design. Those are, although there is detailed advice, they are subjective judgments to make. And, you know, I reiterate, you know, what the comments of the objector are, you know, they are comments that you can come down on a different side of the fence. There are other matters, you know, such as the surface water drainage, S29, the location of the development in Seaton, S3, which I'd suggest, you know, are not really up for debate because they are technical aspects and they've been, you know, they've been considered by statutory consultees. But matters of design, about residential amenity, landscape, they are, you know, subjective matters, and it is the officer's opinion. So, you know, it's fully open for members to come to a different balance of those considerations. If they, you know, if they're evidence that that's not a problem at all.
Thanks, Simon. Can I have a follow-on, Madam Chair?
Yes, certainly.
Well, I'd like to recommend approval for this thing instead of going around the houses on grant permission subject to officers' conditions laid down by the officers.
Do you have a seconder?
I'm included.
Councillor Fairbrother, is your hand up for a question or to second?
It's a question.
Okay, thank you.
Members, a verbal second will be fine. If not,
I'll second that motion.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Daniels.
Sorry, Chair, you appear to be on mute.
Oh, it's about time I learned not to do that. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Granger to approve or grant permission subject to the conditions laid down by the officers, seconded by Councillor Daniels. Right, I'm just going to park that because Councillor Fairbrother has another question.
Thank you, Chair. I was just looking at the first slide that we got, which I know has got type A on it as well, but there's a big building right beside type B. Is that the garage for type A, Simon, or is it the garage for type B? Because it looks extremely close to the house type B. Is it a large garage? What is that? If you can see what I'm referring to on the very first slide where you can see all three.
It's A's garage. It's A's garage, Councillor.
So that's very, very close, isn't it, to type B? But of course, we're not looking at type A at the moment, are we? It just seems very crowded in.
But
so those, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, you're right, Councillor. It is type A's detached garage.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Thanks.
Thank you. We don't appear to have any more questions. Would anybody like to start the debate? Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Chair. I actually went on the site visit before Christmas on this property. The two properties that we're looking at, B and C, are very they're very modern, yeah, but so are the other properties around about. And the other properties that are on the road, the Fernley Road, they're very close together as well, and they're their gardens are quite small too. And these two properties, yes, there isn't a lot of room around them, but there is enough. And as for the listed building, we didn't even know there was a listed building there because we stood outside on the road for quite a long time, and I wouldn't have known that there was a listed building because you couldn't see any part of the listed building. And the other properties that are already there in the road are as close, in fact, are closer to the listed building than the properties that we're talking about. So for these two properties, I would support the fact of giving them approval with the conditions from the officer, having been on site and looked at these two, where these two properties are going to go, and the space available, and what's surrounding it, because many of the areas from the bungalows and the houses they're overlooked by lots of different people. And if you think of the modern estates that we look at as well, lots of the houses are very, very close to each other and do overlook each other's gardens and things like that. So I would support these two particular properties.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Councillor Horsley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit against this, actually. I do agree with what Councillor Lynch has just said there. I do agree with quite a lot of the comments, but I think we're going to create these two properties. They're going to be extremely overlooked by the previous properties that are there now on Fernley Drive and Fernley Close. And as Mounty mentioned earlier, they're just going to be shut. They're just going to be looked into, like completely dominated by the buildings around them. Which that's the applicant's thing. But what really concerns us is where the new entrance is going to be. And again, we'll mention Fernley House, the Grade 2 listed. What hasn't been mentioned here is Fernley House is actually a guest house. It's a bed and breakfast. So the new road that's going in is adjacent to the road where the guests pull in and pull out. Obviously, being a guest house, it hasn't been open during the pandemic, I can imagine. But we're going to create here a crossroads. Basically, people coming down Fernley Drive, people trying to get out of this new application, and people getting out of Fernley House, all on a road where people park right up one side. And I know residents have got issues with this at the moment. I've heard it in parish meetings. So no, it doesn't sit well with me at all at the moment. If we approve this, we're going to cause issues in the future. That's where I'm sitting at the moment with it. I'm not quite happy with it at all.
Thank you, Councillor Horsley. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Got to say, I think I said this last time when I was on the panel again about this, and it's the way we shoehorn houses in to estates like Seaton, villages like Seaton. We find little pieces of land and we allow houses to be shoehorned in. When we talk about overlooking and we look at, I agree with Councillor Lynch, when we go to buy a house on an estate and it's overlooked, we accept that because we're buying that house on that estate. However, number 17 didn't buy that house while these properties were there. These properties are being built, so we have to take that on board, really. And I think when you look at the overlooking and the shadowing of the other properties, I'm very uncomfortable with seeing both these developed there, to be fair.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Next, we have Councillor Fairbrother.
Thank you. Yes, I remember going on a site visit, it was a long time ago, and I think Councillor Lynch has a point, but that grade listed building, grade 2 listed building, is actually at right angles to the road. So if you didn't know it was there, you're not likely to see it because it's not facing onto the road, is it? It's at right angles. So it was difficult to get, what should we say, the impact on it if you don't even know it's there, and Google map that Simon showed us show that it actually is at right angles to the road. So you're not going to see it if you're not looking. So that's in defence of the listed building. That's my feeling.
Thank you, Councillor Fairbrother. Councillor Semple.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. In fact, I think if my recollection, there was 3 of us on the site visit. So echoing what Councillor Lynch said, but I'm glad that Councillor Scott just mentioned the shoehorn stuff, because in the was it the applicant's letter or whatever, he said about no objections. I mean, I agree with Councillor Scott. My feeling, having visited it might be kind of by the letter of law, tick all the boxes, but I think shoehorn, Councillor Scott is absolutely right there. And it concerns me, my concern is the character of Seaton and the impact on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Semple. We don't have any more. We've got Councillor Horsley.
Thanks, Chair. Page 30 of the local plan. I'm just going to go to the top. Strategic policies, spatial strategy and principle of development. Now, in the outline blue box, it says applications for developments which offer a poor standard of design and which fail to positively contribute to character or quality of the site and surrounding area will be refused. Now, I'm going to mention what Councillor Scoster said, shoehorned in. Where do these contribute to the quality of the site? Because they certainly don't contribute in my mind, in my eyes. So it's just a complete mix match of housing, shoehorned in to get the most out of, for a developer. That's where I sit.
Thank you, Councillor Horsley. I think now we'll move on to the Simon Sharp, if you would like to come back. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have really anything to add. Members have been voicing relevant material planning considerations for and against the proposal. As I said previously, councillors, it's a balance. Those matters you've expressed today, members, are subjective matters. You all have expressed when speaking for and against the proposal. You've provided your reasoning why you've come to those opinions. So I don't really have anything to advise or add, Chair, other than councillors were citing material planning considerations appropriately.
Thank you, Simon. Right, I think we'll move on to the vote now, Lee. So if you, this is the motion for granting of the planning permission, subject to the conditions laid down. It was put forward by Councillor Granger and seconded by Councillor Daniels.
Okay, Chair. Starting with yourself.
For.
Councillor Daniels.
For the motion.
Councillor Granger.
For the motion.
Councillor Fairbrother.
Against the motion.
Councillor Horsley.
Against the motion.
Councillor Kirkbride.
Against the motion.
Councillor Lynch.
For.
Councillor Mumby.
For.
Councillor Scott.
Against the motion.
Councillor Semple.
Against the motion.
Councillor Smith.
Against the motion.
Councillor Tyson.
For the motion.
Chair, it's 6 in favour, 6 against. You'll have a casting vote.
This is really difficult. I'm for the motion. I'm really sorry, for the motion. Lee, you're muted.
Yeah, if you just for the purpose of, you just clarify the outcome of that as well, please.
Okay, that we grant planning permission subject to conditions for FUL/2021/0026. It's granted subject to the conditions laid down. Thank you. I think we'll have a 10-minute break before we go on to the next item. So we'll see you all back at 14:12.
We're all back, Chair.
Thank you. Right. Sorry.
I'll just get the speaker inset, Chair, as well. Sorry. Yeah, Chair, you can proceed.
Right, thank you. Moving on now to planning application FUL/2021/0049 Barncroft High Seaton. Again, for a detached dormer type dwelling. So moving on to Simon, please.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously members will be familiar with 16 High Seaton now. So this is the application for dwelling A. So this is the one that sits between number 16 High Seaton, the existing dwelling on site that's being extended and altered at the moment, and number 17, which is Ms. Mousey's home. So that's obviously something that's very relevant, especially given members' concerns, which resulted in the refusal of the previous proposal on this same site. So a particular note, and I will go through the slides in a moment. One of the particular matters to note is that the scale of the gable facing number 17 is reduced, but the footprint of the proposal compared with the previous refused application is larger. One of the other interesting things to note is, which we'll see, is the extent of the proposed dwelling's garden no longer now will extend to the High Seaton boundary hedge. It terminates just beyond the proposed footprint. So what I'll do is I'll share the screen and we can go through the slides. So this shows, again, these are the two dwellings that you've just resolved to grant permission for. This is the garage, which I think Councillor Fairbrother queried it's who it belonged to in the previous application, so it's linked to type A. So this is the footprint of Mountsea's home, number 17. This is the original form of, along with this projection here, of number 16. It now has under construction these extensions to the pier. This is number 16's new garage, which is under investigation, members, although that's not relevant to today's considerations. Officers are noting that it's not being built in accordance with the approved plans, but that is not for today's consideration. So the proposal is for this 1.5 story property. These are the two gable dormers facing backwards, if you like. So although number 17 faces towards High Seaton, number 16 faces towards High Seaton, this dwelling is reversed 180 degrees and faces into the rest of the site. So its rear garden spaces here where this patio area is, and along the boundary with number 17. So this area is outside the boundary. It could be incorporated into this new dwelling's garden at a later date without requiring planning permission, but it is outside of the site as shown on these drawings. So this is the proposed dwelling. So this is the two dormers facing towards type B. So this is the front of the house. This is the rear, and you can see the step, which we'll see in the photographs, the changes in the ground levels to number 17. This is the elevation facing number 17. So this is obviously relevant to members' considerations about the massing, and you'll see in the officer's report we've compared the heights of this ridge of this gable, the ridge of this gable, and the eaves levels with the previous proposal that you refused. That is in, I'll just get the paragraph, paragraph 11.9 in the officer's report. You can see the details in 11.9 and 11.10 about the changes in the heights from the previous refused proposal. You'll also see, members, which is referred to in 11.1 of the officer's report, there is a recommended condition, which is condition 4, to agree the site, the ground levels, the finished ground level for the new dwelling as expressed as above ordnance datum. So we actually have clarity that what doesn't happen is the ground levels are built up and then the dwelling is situated on the top, and suddenly you have a different relationship with number 17 to what was proposed on the plan. So we want that extra clarity in officers' minds, and that's what condition 4 is all about. That's the detached garage, which is the one which is alongside dwelling B, which was the query of Councillor Fairbrother. And now we go on to the photographs. So there's the retaining wall. That's number 17, so that's Mrs. Mount's home. And you'll see in a minute the windows, doors on the side gable facing directly towards the proposal. So the proposal will sit in this gap. It will sit in this gap. So there's the hedge at the back on High Seaton, remembering from the block plan that the garden doesn't extend all the way to that hedge. That area is retained to this property, which is the extended number 16. So there's that difference in ground levels that has been referred to by Miss Mountsie and by yourselves members during the consideration of the previous application. I'll just dwell on that so members have a good idea. This is from the opposite direction, so this is from the High Seaton end. So here again is that retaining wall. This is number 17, which is, I think as Ms Mountsie expressed in her representation on the previous application, is a traditional home of character. It's not listed, but it is of character. It has definite historic and architectural qualities to it. It's obviously one of the older dwellings in Seaton, and retains that architectural and historical quality. And that's why I think in this mind, dwelling A certainly needs to be considered as part of the High Seaton character and appearance, as opposed to the Fernley Drive, Fernley Close character and appearance. This is the much altered 16 Barncroft, which did start off life as a barn, but is definitely not retaining that character these days. It wasn't listed and had previous extensions to it, including to the front. So that's the rear of 16 High Seaton, just to give you an idea. So the new dwelling sits in this gap. And now we're looking directly at Miss Mountie's home. So you can see the patio doors. You can see the ground floor window here, serving a habitable room. You can see the first floor window here. There is a secondary window here as well. But of note is this window serving a habitable room. I believe Miss Mountsie was sure clarify from it's a kitchen window. And you can see the patio doors also serving a habitable room. What you do get an idea from here, members, is the difference in ground levels. So where the camera is right in the plot for dwelling type A under consideration today. And obviously I can put this image up at any time during members' consideration of the item. This is a view from High Seaton, the road itself. So with the boundary hedge. So here is number 17 again, and here's 16. So the new dwelling would sit in the gap, albeit it's got a lower ridge line. So it would appear above this hedge, but not to the degree of number 16 High Seaton, or indeed number 17 High Seaton. I'm showing this image because obviously number 6, the new dwelling type A under consideration, would share the access through what is was part of the garden of number 1 Fernley Drive to get round the back of 16 High Seaton. I think it might have been Councillor Scott and Councillor Horsley made reference to it being at crossroads with the access to Fernley House on the opposite side of the road. There is a stagger, to be honest. It isn't directly opposite. The proposed access is not directly opposite the access to Fernley House. And I just thought these pictures would show what it did look like before all the ground excavation. So we're looking towards 17 High Seaton, the front. The new dwelling sits in this gap. 16 is just out of shot. So quite a much changed landscape from when this photograph was taken over a year ago. And again, you can see this is what 16 High Seaton did look like. And this is obviously number 17. And you can see there were orchard trees, and this ground is, well, this view is changed dramatically now from this to that. So that gives you an indication of how things have changed. There's no late items to report, Chair. And the report is before members. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee, would you introduce the speaker, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Speaker is Joanne Mounsey. Joanne, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Joanne, you're on mute. Don't worry, I'll start your timer again. You're still on mute. Ah, there we go.
Apologies. So I'd like to start by talking about residential amenity and privacy. So the outside amenity of my property would be affected by the bungalow from a privacy perspective and from a noise and disturbance perspective via the outside spaces being created. My garden and rear windows would look down on property A and impact on their privacy also. My property has as described as 2 primary windows, including patio doors facing the proposed dwelling. So the windows that weren't the patio doors, the windows is actually a kitchen and dining room with a sofa. So it's a family room rather than a kitchen, just a kitchen. So the patio doors in the living room, there would be significant impact on my privacy from a dwelling immediately adjacent to it. For 2 years, I've had builders and other agents and the developers working on number 16 High Seaton, being able to view directly into my living room and into my kitchen and dining room. Any residents in the new dwelling would be even closer to these windows and my privacy would be invaded even more. Whilst conditions have been attached by the planning officer in terms of the orientation of windows and obscure glass, my living room windows will be able to look directly in from the outside spaces of property A. So these conditions were attached to the planning permission granted to number 16 High Seaton, and it looks like they have been significantly ignored by the developer. In fact, the property that has been developed on that plot is so much larger than what was there, and quite substantially more than what was granted in the planning application. So it gives me little assurance that the developer is going to stick by the planning applications that would be attached to this permission if it were to be granted. As my property is old and there's limited light from other windows, these are south-facing windows and provide a high proportion of light into those rooms. A significant amount of this light would be blocked by the erection of property A. And whilst modifications have been mentioned to the plans as mentioned, it still remains that my primary windows directly face property A and would still be overshadowed by property A. Flood risk. So I mentioned in the previous my previous comments that I was concerned about the overloading of the underground culvert. But additionally to this, because of the excavation that's gone on beside my property, it's taken the ground level significantly below the level of my property and any such foundations. As the property, the front part of the property is very old, there are little foundations, and I believe there's just foundation stones that were put in there. So if the flooding was to occur on the site, I'm concerned about the structural integrity of my property. I'd also like to talk again, I know I talked before about the design, so of the other dwellings. Again, the design in this particular case is even more so out of character with the rest of the area. As was mentioned, mine's an circa 18th century cottage, and as such as it remains in character of that era. And I believe that the very, very modern design of the proposed property is completely out of keeping. And again, I believe it does not positively contribute to the character or quality of the area, as is a requirement from the Allerdale Plan Part 1. Density, again, the density of the plot is not in keeping with the High Seaton area. And I believe that, as I said before, outline planning permission had previously been granted for the entirety of the plot for just one dwelling, which again is more in keeping with the area. I raised my concerns again about environmental impact. We have a lot of wildlife in the area, including red squirrels, which is an endangered species, and that habitat is being eroded by the removal of wild areas for development purposes. Again, service and infrastructure is a consideration, putting an additional strain on the service and infrastructure of Seaton. And also, again, a concern is the highway safety of the additional vehicles around the junction at Fernley. And that's my comments for this application. Thank you.
5 minutes, spot on. Thank you. We have some questions for you, Ms. Mounsey. Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that presentation, Mrs. Mounsey. You've mentioned 2 or 3 times in your presentation, both before and now, about Local Plan 1. Did your council not inform you that we've moved on now to Local Plan 2?
No, I just followed the link.
Councillor, perhaps Simon Sharp would like to jump in here and explain.
Yeah, actually, I need to correct you, Councillor Granger. So I think Ms. Mounsey is referring to the Allerdale Local Plan Part 1, which is still part of the adopted, it is part of the development plan. So members, as detailed in the officer's report, it's parts 1 and 2 sit alongside each other. They're complementary to each other. So Ms. Mounsey is very correct in what she's saying and referring to part 1. So it's members need to look at parts 1 and 2 together.
Grant Simon, thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Councillor Semple.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Joanna. It's not an easy thing talking to the likes of us via satellite, is it? I've just got really a couple of questions for you. I mean, I was at the site, it was in January time, obviously very barren, not the right time of year. Can I ask you, how long have you been in the property?
Just over 15 years.
15 years, yeah. So I'm just trying to get an idea of the kind of character of the place. So what was there? Was it like a big garden or something, or what was it?
Yeah, so it was a big garden. The top half was quite wild and not kept up by the previous owner. And then the area adjacent to my property, as Simon said, was there was a couple of apple trees, and the previous owner did have some ornamental plants in there. But the top part of the property, that backs onto Fernley Close, that was very wild, and I believe that's where a lot of the wildlife came through.
Okay, and one final, quick question. From what you're saying, you gave us an awful lot of information there. Thank you for that. Is that in fact, under this new proposal, you would be able to look, their privacy is impacted. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, absolutely. So because they've dug down, I now the plot's on a slope. But so my garden is actually quite a bit higher than where my house is. So my rear garden, I don't know how much it is, but the wall that you saw, it was well over, it's approximately 6 foot. And I think I have another few feet on top of that. So I'm not being very accurate in how much higher I am, but I can look from my back garden right down into what will be their garden area.
Yeah.
And my rear bedroom window would be looking down onto them as well. Yeah. But additionally, from my living room and from my kitchen, the kitchen side of my kitchen diner, I'd be able to look right down onto them as well. So I'm higher than them now.
Yeah, I got that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Fairbrother, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Joanne, that picture of that retaining wall, it seems very close to your patio doors. Was there a hedge there before? And what impact does it have now when you step out of your patio doors? How much room is there between you and the wall, I suppose?
So previously the ground was higher, and then there was a hedge on top of that. All of that has been excavated out, and there's 2 walls now because it's hard to describe. We put a boundary wall. Hello.
Simon's just showing us a photograph. Yeah.
Okay. So we had a retaining wall for the ground because the ground was quite loose, and then there was higher ground and a hedge, and that has all been excavated away. I was in legal dispute with the developer because they'd actually removed the boundary hedge rather than and taken it up to my retaining wall. So now I've got about maybe 1.5 meters between my patio doors and the newly built wall. So yeah, that wall there. So I'm very close to where they're proposing to put the property. So as I say, I can step out of my patio doors and look directly down onto them.
And you've lost a hedge as well.
And
you've lost it, yeah.
So in fact, if the hedge hadn't been removed and the ground hadn't been removed and the boundary hadn't been removed, I wouldn't be able to see a lot of what's actually down there in the plot.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for that detail. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Horsley next. Thank you, Chair.
I think Janet Fairbrother, thank you, Councillor Fairbrother. You've answered a lot of questions there for us, but to Miss Mounsey, you describe looking out now. You're looking down onto what on the application. To me, it looks like about a 6-foot drop. And again, you mentioned there about flooding issues. It's obviously something I'm going to raise later on with Simon, but to me, it looks like it's going to be a collection point from it's obviously the lowest part of the site. And how that water is going to get out there, I do not know. Have you seen water gathered in that area in the proposed application for this?
Yeah, I think that was mentioned when the application was in last time, that the soil is quite a clay soil. So it tends to hold the water on there. And obviously I have concern because in breaching the Party Wall Act, they've excavated below the level of my property. And because, as I said, the old part of my house basically has no what you would call foundations, I'm really concerned because of that lower level. If there was flooding in that area, it could potentially undermine further my property and then come actually under the building itself.
Yeah. You can actually, there's a giveaway in your video link at the moment, how old your property is. I can see an oak beam above your head, naturally carved. So yeah, you're giving I do agree, it's 18th century property or probably earlier. I've seen it on the old maps. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't seem to have any more questions for you, Ms. Mounsey. So thank you very much for your excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Right. Now, I believe, has the agent got a letter to be read out, Simon?
They do, Chair, so I'll just bring it forward. So this is a letter from the applicant, and I'll say I'll read it verbatim. Chair and members of the planning panel, we would like to take this opportunity to comment on the issues raised by the objectors in relation to this planning application and the previous submission on this site. Members will be aware that policy S32 of the local plan part 1 is particularly relevant to the determination of this application. The planning application that was submitted under planning reference full 2020-0043 was refused at the development panel due to the concerns with regards to the scale and massing of the dwelling and its resultant impact on the residential amenity of 17 High Seaton. The principal concerns focused on the separation distance between the proposed site combined with the proposed scale of the development, and as such this is a significantly amended proposal now before you. The ground levels as proposed are as visible on site, and there is a fall of around 1.5 metres from number 17 to the level of this application site. The new proposed property is a 1.5-storey property in place of the previously submitted 2-storey dwelling. It only has an eaves height of 3.4 metres with the same ridge height at 7 metres as previous, but the majority of the roof's volume is much reduced, which will considerably change the massing issue, which members considered impacted on the residential amenity of the adjacent dwelling in the last application to an unacceptable degree. The window to the northeast side elevation is to be to a bathroom window and will be obscure glazing to ensure that proposal will not create an unacceptable level of overlooking to the neighbouring property, which was also previously mentioned in the reason for refusal in the last application. Overall, the proposed change in dwelling type and design is much reduced in scale and massing, adjoining the boundary with number 17, and it is considered that this should now provide an acceptable scheme given the members' previous concerns. We therefore hope that the application will be approved in accordance with the officer's recommendation. Kind regards, Just Brit DO Properties. That was read verbatim, members. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Now, questions from members for Simon. Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Simon, what is the permitted distance between properties, please?
Thank you, Councillor. There is no minimum distance in terms of planning. Obviously, with regards to matters such as building regs, building regulations, forgive me, there are distances, but under planning there is no minimum distance. So it's obviously a matter of judgment. If it's a matter with regard to residential amenity, it is a judgment on each individual's, each case's merits under policy S32 of the local plan part 1. So there is, the answer to your question is there is no defined distance under planning law or indeed planning policy.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. Councillor Fairbrother.
Thank you, Chair. It's interesting, Simon, that in that presentation from the applicant, it doesn't mention what the officer's report mentions in 1110. There is an additional 45 square metres of footprint extending to the rear. So I think it's a bit disingenuous not to mention that the footprint is now larger, even though the building itself is slightly smaller. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I'd agree, and I wanted to make that quite clear in the report, and I think I made it clear in the introduction as well that there is an increase in footprint to the previous proposal. As I said, I looked at these measurements personally in detail to note the comparisons. So those are detailed in 11.9, 11.10. As well in terms of the differences. So yes, for clarity, 11.10, there is an additional 45 square metres of footprint extending to the rear.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just come back with a second question on that same footprint issue, or should I wait?
Yeah, that's fine.
Going back to the first slide where it's all set out, and I asked about that garage. As the when you come into the site, before you get to the garage, on the left there's two white rectangles. Are they parking places for type A? Is that what those two white rectangles are?
They are. I'll just for clarity, I'll just share the screen again. So
okay, thank you.
So you're referring to these
spaces? Yes,
yeah. So these are parking spaces. This is the garage.
Oh, right.
Oops.
Would you leave that up? Would you leave that up? Because I've got a question on that one.
And just for clarity, this is that rear projection as well.
Mm-hmm. And that's a patio.
The property, and that grid is a patio, so that's an external area. So that is the footprint of the proposed dwelling. Obviously, just to recall members, it faces the principal elevation is this way, in contrast to number 17 that way, and the existing dwelling that way. I'll leave it up.
Thank you. Thanks for the answering my question.
I'll just use my privilege and jump in here if you don't mind, Elaine. Could you tell me the distance, approximate distance between the existing house 16 and the type A building?
From memory, I did measure it. I can, if we want an exact measurement, we can adjourn and measure it, but I from memory it was about 2 meters.
Okay.
6'6".
Right, and the distance between type A and the boundary wall there?
If it's not referred into the report, I can measure that, but I'd need probably an adjournment to do so.
No, just do you know approximately?
That distance will be about 4 meters, but that's approximate, and then there'll be about just under a meter when you're actually in number 17's garden.
Right, that's great, thank you.
I can get an exact measurement while members are deliberating.
Okay, yeah, that would be good. Right, now we better go back to who's next. It's Elaine, sorry, Councillor Lynch, sorry.
Thank you. When you look from the road onto High Seaton, how you said something about how far the property would come above the hedge, because that's concerning me a little bit about the fact that you've got this 18th century property, you've got this the converted barn, which is now quite modern. Then across the road cross Fernley Drive. You've got the listed building. How is this property A going to impact on that look from the road?
Okay,
Is anyone going to-
yeah, sorry, Councillor. What I'll do is I'll share the screen and I'll indicate I'll go between the section drawing and that photograph so you can see that. So the answer to the question is you will see the roofscape above that edge. So,
and will you see dormers, or the dormers are at the front?
yeah, the dormers are on the other. The dormers are on. The dormers are on the other side. So
On the other side.
If I just, so it's this elevation that you'll see.
Yeah.
You can see it's below 17 and 16, but not by much. So if we drop down, what you'll see, trying to get my cursor to work, is you will see roof. So the pitched roof in this gap. You won't see the vertical elevation, you will just see roof, but you will see roof. This camera angle is obviously on the opposite footway, so you can see, but you will see it. There's no doubt you'll see it in the high scene and street scene as an infill dwelling.
And so what you sorry.
Yeah, sorry, what you won't see is the vertical rear elevation, because that will be obscured by the hedge.
Yeah, but what you're introducing there is a modern building into what essentially is a much older street scene area there. And the other thing is that the footprint has increased, but the garden area and everything hasn't increased, and the garden area is very, very small compared to the footprint. Is there a sort of again, from a planning point of view, is there an area of garden that you should have for the size of the footprint of a property?
There isn't. It's just a judgment again. It is a noticeable reduction in garden area from the previous proposal.
Thank you.
So I would offer the officer opinion that it's marginal but acceptable in terms of the level of amenity space for that size of dwelling proposed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Horsley, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Simon, can you put the slide up where you're looking onto the back of the view of 16 Bancroft, please?
Just bear with me, please.
No problem. There's another one to that where you're looking sort of like directly onto it. That's it. That's the one. Right. I just want to point something out here. I'm going to tell you that photo would have been taken in the morning because you're getting the overshadowing on 16 and in the sun's up in the south. Now you imagine the gap between number 16 and number 17 and this application that's before us now with this new house. Yes, it's reduced in height in places, but go to 11.9 and it says the ridge stays the same, 7 meters, but the bulk of the roof's gable face number 78 is much reduced in scale. So it's not reducing the height. So my point here is when that sun goes round, does its full circle, and it's pointing the opposite direction later on in the day, you're going to get that overshadowing from that house, from the new application, right onto number 17 again. It's clearly going to overshadow number 17.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. There's denying that there will be that element of overshadowing at with the sun at a particular height at a particular time of day. Obviously, in summer with a higher sun, it changes, and obviously throughout the day as the sun tracks around. But you're right, you're absolutely right, Councillor, that at that particular time of day, and you're correct, pointed out that obviously with a mass here, that shadow transposes itself onto number 17 as a result of the new dwelling. That's absolutely correct for that time of year at that time of day, and there'll be other times as well when that of year when that will be affected as well with the lower sun. Absolutely correct, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Scott next.
Thank you, Chair. I'll use the word shoehorned again, but actually it isn't shoehorned, is it? It's overdevelopment. Let's be absolutely honest. This is overdevelopment of this corner site within Seaton. That's the only thing I can say, really. If I was living in number 17 and the damage that I'd seen done to the garden next to my property, I'd be very, very disappointed, to be fair. I actually would like to put a motion forward of refusal on overdevelopment, loss of residential amenity, and overlooking, if I could.
Councillor Scott, is that a formal motion that you're putting forward at this juncture?
Yeah, I think it is, Simon. Yeah.
Can I just understand? Are you quoting particular Part 1 local plan policies, and do you need any? Obviously, it's not for officers, but do you need any assistance?
Yes, I would love assistance, Simon, please.
So, what can you just repeat what you've said, just for the benefit of the meeting, please?
Yeah, I would like to put a motion forward for refusal based on well, if you actually look at 6.8 in the documents that support it, you have D, E, and F, which I believe actually sums this site up completely, which it reads overdevelopment of land, and a separate application has been submitted, but it's still overdevelopment. If you look at the land that's there and the number of houses.
Yeah, sorry, forgive me, Councillor, I just need to go more slowly. So you're referring to 6.8 of the officer's report, and I think you're referring to D, E, and F.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's overdevelopment of land. You're saying there's a loss of residential amenity in terms of loss of light and overshadowing.
Absolutely, 100%, yes.
And that residential amenity is also overlooking as well.
In terms of overlooking, yeah, and loss of privacy.
Because there is a bit of repetition between E and F. Far from me to just what I'd guard against, Councillor, is although each application is considered on its own merits, obviously the previous application focused on matters more E and F rather than D, overdevelopment. So just you might want to reflect on that. I don't know whether Jill, you want to come in on that in terms of whether Councillor Scott has an opportunity to amend his motion before it's formally tabled, or whether it's too late to do that, and Councillor Scott may not want to reflect on it. But I just offer that as guidance, as officer guidance. So I think what you're referring to is the same policy S32 that was quoted in the previous reason for refusal. Is that correct, Councillor Scott?
Yes, it is, Simon. Thank you.
I might just take advice from the Deputy Monitoring Officer now, Chair, as to whether Councillor Scott has the opportunity to reflect on that, on his motion before
Yeah,
proceeding.
did you want a 5-minute adjournment or?
No, I think
Okay.
if the Deputy Monitoring Officer is comfortable providing that opinion at this stage, the query is whether I'm just giving Councillor Scott advice on ground D, and just providing advice that wasn't what the previous application was refused on, and might be difficult to defend if it went to appeal.
Yeah, I would be grateful for 5 minutes if that would be okay with yourself, Simon. I think I got instinct to say that officer advice is appropriate, but I'd like to take just 5 minutes if I could, just to take some advice. That's okay.
That's obviously in your gift, Chair, whether you...
Yeah, did you want to go into a room with Councillor Scott as well?
I don't think it would be appropriate with Councillor Scott. I think it would be just,
Okay.
if it would just be officers, please,
Yep,
if the clerk would organise
So we
that. If Chair, if you're
We'll
happy
just
to...
adjourn for 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Adjourn for 5 minutes. Okay, so if everybody could just come back in 5 minutes' time, please. Thank you. Right, we're all back now, I think.
Yep.
Okay, Simon, did you want to carry on?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I had some advice from the Deputy Monitoring Officer. So I think Councillor Scott was in the process of formulating that motion, and it hadn't been finalised. So there is an opportunity for Councillor Scott to reflect on the officer advice from me. And my officer advice to Councillor Scott is to strongly resist from including ground D, the overdevelopment, within the reason for refusal, as that wasn't cited in the previous proposal, the reason for refusal in the previous proposal. I'll just share my screen, and you can just recall that was the reason for refusal on the previous application. So it referred to criterion D of policy S32. And I understand, in terms of your references to E and F of 6.8, Councillor Scott, that grounds that you're putting forward on E and F bears a strong resemblance to that previous reason for refusal. I think what you're saying is although there's a change to the proposal, the change hasn't overcome that previous reason for refusal. Obviously,
it doesn't, Simon. Sorry, can I just add though, with the increase in the footprint, does that class as overdevelopment if we allow a footprint to be increased on this?
It's a fair point. It's a fair point, Councillor Scott. I would say I would suggest not, given the amount of undeveloped land which is still retained with number 16, because you look at the site as a whole. It's a fair point. I don't think it's a material increase in the development to result in that overdevelopment, but it's a fair point to a degree. But I'd strongly suggest you don't include that. But obviously, you're at complete liberty as a councillor to do that and provide the reasoning and the policy. If you were looking at a policy, you could quote policy S32 again. That would be relevant to overdevelopment.
I do feel, to be fair, that S32 safeguarding amenity and in keeping D overdevelopment, obviously with increased footprint, the loss of residential amenity with regards to loss and overshadowing, and the impact on residential in terms of overlooking lost privacy and loss of light is sufficient, in my opinion. Sorry.
Right. So just so if we can just strip that down. So are you saying, in regard to points E and F of 6.8, that the previous reason for refusal replicates and sums those concerns that you have? And are you, in effect, without leading you at all, are you in effect putting forward that previous reason for refusal to cover E and F?
Yes.
Yeah.
But you're saying you've considered the officer's advice with regard to D, but you'd like D to remain. So you're also saying that the proposal constitutes overdevelopment.
I personally, yes, I do. I believe it should stay.
Okay,
I think it was
fine.
Councillor Fairbrother who highlighted the disingenuous increase in the footprint.
So you're referring to the existing character of the area, are you, in that regard? I think that's what you said previously.
Yes.
So the first reason is basically the previous reason for refusal. So can you just read that to me, Councillor? Because you need to put that forward on the motion. If it
Yes.
helps, it is actually on the screen as well.
Where are we at? Refusal on policy S32 of the Allerdale Local Plan 2014 as dwelling A, proposed as an unacceptable effect on the residential amenity of number 17 High Street in terms of loss of privacy and a result of overlooking, increased sense of enclosure has resulted in being overbearing and a loss of sunlight and daylight received as a result of overshading. Is that all right for you, Simon?
Okay, that's fine. So you've quoted that. And then for your second reason for refusal, you're saying, and you'll need to phrase it yourself, Councillor, but I understand you're saying that that the proposal is overdevelopment in the context of the existing character of the area. Is that correct?
It is overdevelopment in the existing character of the area by increasing the footprint on the particular site.
Okay, and is that's contrary to? Are you? I would probably suggest policy S5 if you're going as a policy there.
Yeah, development principles sounds good. Yeah.
Okay. Have you got that written down, Councillor? I know it's recorded. I don't mean the policy. I mean what you've just read out to me. I just need to write it out again. So you're saying, I understand, that proposal is overdevelopment in the context of the existing character of the area due to its increased footprint, and as a result is contrary to policy S5,
development principles
of the Allerdale Local Plan Part 1 2014.
Correct.
And that's your formal motion?
Yes, thank you, Simon.
Okay, I'll hand back to Chair. That's
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that?
Yes, I'd like to second that, Chair. I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Fairbrother. You were quick off the mark there. So we've got a proposer and a seconder. We've still got a couple of people wanting questions, so I'll just move on quickly to Councillor Kirkbride.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the motion's moving forward now, but one of my concerns is 6.8 letter I, the flood risks. I've done a site visit the back end of last year when I noted that there hadn't been rain for quite a number of days, but there was still water sitting in some man-made holes on the site, which sort of reiterates the lack of there's not the opportunity there for the water to naturally sink into the ground. So there is a great flood risk there. That's my main point. The other ones have been covered by Councillor Horsley and Councillor Scott, so that's from me. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kirkbride. So just on, obviously we've referred to previously, and I think Ms Mountsley referred to it as well, the clay soils. So there won't be that ability to percolate. And that's why the applicant is proposing the discharge to that culverted watercourse, instead of relying on soakways and percolation. And they are also relying on a degree of rainwater harvesting as well. So as you'll see, there are the strategy which has been approved by the lead local flood authority, the county council, demonstrates that there will be no increase in surface water flooding as a result of the proposal, taking into account 1 in 100 year events, rainfall events, and climate change. So just for clarity, members, and this applies to all these developments, developments are not a panacea for ridding areas of existing flooding. What you need to do is assess whether it will increase the risk of flooding for all events up to a 1 in 100 year event, plus a 30% allowance increase for climate change. So, you know, there'll be plenty of occasions where you will see impermeable soils, especially in Allerdale, impermeable heavy clays on sites, and there might be lying water. Developments are not there as the panacea to sorting out issues. What the test is the development making it worse for all events up to a 1 in 100 year event plus climate change? Thank you.
Thank you. And I've got Councillor Horsley and then Councillor Fairbrother. Then I think we'll move into debate.
Thanks, Chair. I was just going to second Councillor Scott's motion there. I completely agree with him. And, you know, I'll mention 11.9 again, just so everyone's familiar. This proposal is actually, when you look at it, it's a third bigger than the previous proposal, which, you know, that's why I do completely agree with Councillor Scott over development. But what I want to put to Simon, and Councillor Kirkbride just mentioned there as well, is the drainage. This is the lowest point of that site. So rainwater only flows one way. Is the culvert, how is this rain going to connect to the culvert? Is the culvert lower than this? Or is there going to be pumps put in? I'm a bit concerned about this because rain doesn't flow upwards. If you could bring some light on this, Simon, please.
Yeah, so there is a fall, but obviously culvert is underground, so there is a fall from the surfaces to be created, and from obviously the down pipes which will collect water from the roof, and then there is a fall to the inlet into the existing culvert. You're right. You know, the level as proposed, the ground level as proposed, it is one of the lowest parts of the site overall. But obviously the culvert's underground, and you can get the requisite fall to that culvert from plot A.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fairbrother.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I take your point, Simon, that a development isn't going to be a panacea for sorting flood problems. But I do remember the very first time we looked at this planning application, the taking out of the hedge, digging away of the soil. Obviously, taking those natural features away, which had been there for many years, is going to cause more flooding problems and just building a wall where there used to be a hedge and a grass bank, as you showed us in the previous photographs, what it used to look like. So in a sense, the development is going to cause a flooding problem, which probably wasn't really there before, in my opinion.
No, you're right, Councillor. There's no two ways about it. Though, you know, we all now talk about and promote slowing the flow in catchments, and if you remove vegetation and you're introducing hard impermeable surfaces, then you are no doubt going to increase that flow. That has been taken into account. You know, there is a substantial increase in the amount of impermeable surfaces and reduction in vegetation as a result of this proposal. No two ways about it, but it has been taken into account and factored in when devising these, you know, the surface water drainage strategy. But you're right, you know, that will inevitably occur, but to an acceptable level. You know, won't increase the risk of flooding.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you. Right, moving on to debate. Do we have any starters? Councillor Semple.
Thanks, Chair. I think pretty much everything's been said. In my view, this is an unneighbourly development. I know that might not be legal, but I have enormous sympathy for Ms. Mounsey, and I think that, I mean, They're completely turning it around. I just don't think any thought's been really given to making it the best development that it can be. It seems to me that it's just unacceptable for all the reasons my fellow councillors have said. Thank you.
Chair, I just thought it might be helpful just before we go to the vote, just to recall, and there is a difference, there is a material difference. Just go back to the outline approval that was allowed on appeal. It was an outline approval, and it will just, I think, inform members for as debate continues or going to the vote on Councillor Scott's motion. If I just share the screen again, this might just assist. So this is, can members see that? This, yeah, this shows the outline. So this is the new dwelling, which was proposed at the time, with number 17 here, and Barncroft as it was in its original massing. And you can see how it was going to be laid out here. It was an outline proposal, but you can see the type of footprint that the inspector was considering indicatively in the spacing to 17 and 16. In officers' minds, it's a materially different proposal to what's before members, but it may be referred to going forward. For example, if and I stress if members refused the proposal today and it went to appeal, officers' minds, it is a materially different proposal to that before members. Just thought that would be helpful, so members are well and truly informed of that before debate continues on any vote. Thank you.
Sorry there, I completely lost the screen. I think idiot mode's gone forward. Right, do we have anybody else wanting to say anything? No? Well, thank you, Simon. That last plan was most informative, and I think it is quite important. So thank you very much indeed. Right, Lee, I think we'll go to the vote. And would you, Simon, please read out the reasons for refusal for this? We've got one motion on the floor for refusal, and it's been put forward by Councillor Scott and seconded by Councillor Fairbrother. But I haven't got, I know the first reason was the reasons that were given last time, and the second reason was contrary to S5. But
yeah, I have them, Councillor. Just bear with me. Just swap screens. It's like Cape Canaveral sometimes, balancing all these. So the first reason is the development is contrary to policy S32 of the Allerdale Local Plan Part 1, as the dwelling proposed has an unacceptable effect on the residential amenity of number 17 High Seaton in terms of loss of privacy as a result of overlooking, an increased sense of enclosure as a result of being overbearing, and loss of sunlight and daylight received as a result of overshadowing. And the second reason for refusal is the development, the proposal is overdevelopment in the context of the existing character of the area by reason of its increased footprint, and as a result is contrary to policy S5 of the Allerdale Local Plan Part 1 2014. That's the increased footprint to that previously proposed. Thank you, Chair.
thank you. Lee, could we go to the vote then, please? So,
Yeah.
Yeah, we're voting now. Just to make it clear, are we voting for the motion?
Yes.
Or
We're voting for the motion to refuse.
So we're voting for the motion to refuse.
Yeah, so if you want to refuse, councillor, you're saying for, and if you don't want to refuse, you're saying against. I know that's very confusing. So is every member very clear on that? If you're voting for refusal, you're saying for.
Thank you for the clarification.
Chair, we'll start with yourself.
For.
Councillor Daniels.
For.
Councillor Granger.
Against.
Councillor Fairbrother.
For.
Councillor Horsley.
For.
Councillor Kirkbride.
For.
Councillor Lynch.
For.
Councillor Mumby.
I think it's for us.
We'll just come back in a moment. Councillor Scott.
For the motion.
Councillor Semple.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Tyson.
For.
Councillor Mumby.
Yes, for.
Thank you.
Screen froze again.
No problem. Chair, 11 in favour, 1 against, no abstentions. The motion's carried.
Thank you. Then for the avoidance of doubt, then the planning proposal has been refused for the reasons given by Mr. Sharp earlier.
Yes, there's a reason put forward by Councillor Scott. Yeah.
And seconded by Councillor Fairbrother. Thank you. Is that it today? Yep. So thank you very much, councillors, for your time. And I think Janet and I are staying on along with Councillor Lynch, aren't we? Are we still recording?
Chair, I'll just stop the meeting now.